Because of the way the universe is created, we each of us live in two worlds at the same time. We have to live in the outer life of our own bodies and the inner life of our own souls.
Hello and welcome to Living the Inner Life. I'm your host, Chris Sheridan, and this podcast will be an exploration into the dimensions of consciousness, of our inner life. We're going to talk about dreams, we're going to talk about thoughts, feelings, beliefs, everything that goes on in this interior existence of ours. And yes, it's true, we do live two lives. We have this outer world where there are people that we know, places that we go, things that we do. And at the same time, we live this interior existence with our thoughts, our beliefs, the things that we want to do, the things we're afraid of, our hopes, our dreams, all kinds of things. They're both going on at the same time. A lot of times they seem separate, but they are not. They are deeply connected. And the major premise from which I'm approaching this is that it moves from the inside out, from the inner towards the outer. So the opposite would be if you want to change the way you feel about something inside, well, change all the stuff on the outside. Where I'm coming from is that if you change the things on the inside, the things you think, the way you think, what you believe in, how you believe, and you apply that in your life, it will emanate out and you will see change in your outer world. Okay, and we have more control, more power resting in our inner life than we do with the world around us, because face it, things are very difficult to change. All right, people are stubborn, they're set in their ways, institutions are sometimes grounded in a long history of status quo. So this change can be difficult to try to manipulate and foster transformation in the outer world, especially with other people. What we can do is work on inner transformation, okay? So to introduce myself, since this is the first introductory podcast on Living the Inner Life, I'm Chris Sheridan, and I've been studying consciousness and spirituality, metaphysics, philosophy, psychology for a number of years, over 30 years. I have a master's degree in transformational psychology. That's like depth psychology, like Carl Jung, and mythological and more of a spiritual psychology, which I think is really important. It's where I found the most interest, and I want to share my discoveries along those lines with you, and also share, more importantly, what has worked for me in my life. Because what I'm getting at is a practical philosophy of life. Not just speculation on things should be this way or they should be that way and they shouldn't do this. Okay, well, I want to come up with and share, and I want you to share with me too in the comments about how we can actually do things, how we can make change, things that practically work. In a practical, they actually work, okay? It's not theory. It takes some theory to get to the practice, but really, the importance is applying these concepts, these new thoughts, new beliefs, if we have them, into our lives and see how well they work. Okay, it's almost like lifting weights or practicing a musical instrument. You can talk about it, you can theorize on it, you can have all kinds of opinions and listen to the opinions of others. But what really matters and what really comes down to it is how these things work in your life. When you lift the weights, are you getting stronger? When you practice the instrument, are you getting better? Are you having more enjoyment as a musician? Same with the inner life, okay? It's a practice. It is something you actually have to do. Now, it sounds like it's all up in the head, like, oh, it's my inner life and it's in my thoughts and you're listening and I'm talking and these are concepts and ideas getting thrown around. Okay, but it is a muscle. Your mind is a muscle. It is just as strong, if not stronger, than our bodies. You know, if there's a will, there's a way. So this is very important to recognize that the focus is going to be from the inner towards the outer. And that's what I believe, and that's why I have this podcast, and I want to share these types of things with you, okay? So this turning inward for a solution to our problems also implies that many of our problems are created internally. Now, they may or may not be our fault that we didn't originate some of these troubles, but that we can take a problem on and keep it alive, like nursing a grudge or harboring a resentment. That's something we do, and we can cause real problems for ourselves with our inner life. Okay, face it, if you're worried about something constantly, whether or not this thing is real, whether or not you know what's going to happen, it could just be an unfound fear. It could be based in the past. Well, this dog bit me before. Now all dogs are like the dog that bit me, and you're looking at the world with a chip on your shoulder. That's the inner life, and it can be a great burden. It can cause great trouble with us in our inner and outer lives. And the great news is we can also use a well thought out and very conscious, very present, active involvement with our inner life and make some of these inner changes. And we will see results not only inside, but outside ourselves in our daily waking lives. Okay? Now, we know this to be true from many different areas. We know this from science, invention, innovation, discoveries are made by people who think differently. Okay, it's not just the status quo. All the great discoveries, a lot of times are made by an individual or a very small group of people that thought outside the box, that didn't think that the current way was the only way or even the best way, that there is a new way or a new thought or a new way at looking at something. And initially, these people will face a lot of backlash, criticism. They're not going along with the accepted science. But it's only through taking this chance, through stepping outside of that innovation, that these discoveries can be made. Point of example is the Wright brothers, when they came up with the airplane, the first practical, heavier than air flying machine. There were already balloons that worked quite well by then, but there weren't any things called airplanes that were out there. And a Professor Langley from the Smithsonian had conducted, very, very respected scientist of his day, had conducted many attempts at powered flight, heavier than air powered flight, failed miserably, and came to the conclusion that it was impossible. And this was in the late 1800s. And it wasn't 5 years later that the Wright brothers, who thought differently, they thought like bicycle people instead of aviation scientists, if there even were any at that time. And they believed in what they were doing. They believed they could find a way. They believed that they could do what most people thought was impossible, but they didn't believe it was impossible. They believed it was possible. And of course, we know what happened. They made a very successful airplane that influenced and has changed the way we travel and move about in the world, thanks to somebody thinking differently. Okay? And that's what we're going to get at as we go through this. I don't want to just reinforce some already deeply held belief. We have to question. It doesn't mean you have to throw away something that really works, but you may want to question and say, is this still working in my life? Is there a better way to think about this? All right. So that's what we're talking about. Discovery, innovation, invention. The laboratory of these experiments is going to be in your own consciousness, in your own mind. And the field where you're going to do your research will be in the outer world. When you apply these techniques, when you apply a new thought or a different way of thinking towards the things in your everyday life, you will then get to see and get feedback. Well, that didn't work. Or, that worked a little bit better than it did when I was thinking this different way. So then you can say, I'll carry that into the next time. Okay, so we're going to look at this almost like a scientist might. All right. We also know the importance of the inner life through religion. There's in Buddhism, there's this notion of the Buddha within, this inner Buddha nature that's divine, that is all-knowing, that is smarter than we are, is beautiful, harmonious, and we all have it within us. It's just that we can't get to it when there is all kinds of static, and there's distractions, and there's all these other things competing for our attention, or the fact that maybe we simply just don't realize it or don't believe that we have this greater part of ourselves deep within. Okay? From the Bible, it's not me who doeth the works, it is the Father within me that doeth the works. It is the Father within. The kingdom of heaven is within. Okay? And St. Paul said it's the Christ in you that's the hope and glory. Okay? Not this second coming from on high, or some other guy just swooping in at the last minute to save the day. This second coming, I think what St. Paul was getting at was that we have to release this. It's already there. We have to release it and become that. That's the coming, the second coming, as it's coming out of you, okay? And there are other spiritual and religious traditions, different native Aboriginal tribes really focus on the inner over the outer and how important that is. Now, in psychology, you may have heard change your mind, change your life. Yes, that's true, but we're going to be careful with that because with mind science or the law of attraction from The Secret and some other things, a lot of times comes off as sounding like, well, geez, if you just change your thought, your life will change and it'll be wonderful. Instead of thinking Volkswagen, think Ferrari, and you're going to go into your garage the next day and voila, there it is. Not so much, okay? Because we're going beyond the mind. And if mind we're thinking and we're talking about a thought, well, I think A and now I should think B. That's removing a thought and replacing it with another. Very materialistic, actually. It sounds almost very external. And it doesn't sound very spiritual in that sense. But what's important is that we're not just maybe changing a particular thought, we're also working on how our thoughts operate, being aware of our thoughts and the consequences of them. Because I know so many people I've known who have written down affirmations and they put Post-its on their mirror and maybe they repeat a mantra, and yet it doesn't happen. These changes aren't coming through because there's always something else happening. Okay, there's so much more in this landscape of the inner life than just a thought content of consciousness. There's our beliefs, our fears, our emotions, our shadow that we're probably not even aware of at all, unless we really pause to take a look at it. These factors, all these influences are going on, and they can sometimes really make it difficult if we just change a thought. So we're going to get beyond that. We're going to go beyond just thinking a thought. It's really how we think, as much as, if not more, than what it is we think about. Okay, and this is developing a living philosophy of life. Okay, philosophy might sound like a lot of metaphysical speculation, people throwing about opinions on things they can't really prove or see, and that's part of the practice of philosophy. But the goal of philosophy is to come up with a code, a personal code, your own living philosophy applied to your life in a meaningful way every day that affects, influences, and changes your experience with the outer world, with other people, with life in general, with nature, and most importantly, with yourself. Okay, and this will go further into intuition and dreams, sometimes even letting our thoughts go away and stop thinking, saying, no, maybe I shouldn't be driving the car right now, okay? And let me rely on divine guidance, or this inner guidance. It doesn't have to come from the great beyond. It can come from the deep within. There's part of ourselves that knows better. The Swiss psychologist, Dr. Carl Jung, thought that this self, he called the self with a capital S, not the small s, which is like the ego or the selfish self. This S, capital S self, is this greater, this transpersonal, transcendent self that we all have. It's all part of us. It's just often we don't either know it or we don't believe it, or even if we do believe it, we don't always call on it or rely on it and depend on it and trust it to help guide us through some of the difficulties and changes that we all have to face in life. And we can get a lot of these lessons, not only from scriptures, but from myths. And one of the greatest places, I think, where you can really see this relationship between the inner and the outer life is in movies. Yes, even Hollywood movies like Star Wars or Top Gun that you might think are very physical. There's a hero's journey, this outer quest. You have to go get the sword. You have to rescue the princess. You have to shoot down the bad guy. You have to save these people who are suffering from this evil force. And it's all external. It's a battle. It's this. There's a machine. There's everything else. But when you really take a second look at some of these movies, you'll see that it is actually the interchange that is more important. In fact, these outer things can't really be accomplished unless it accompanies and is preceded by an interchange. And that's where the real warrior work is. Okay, that's where the hero makes some of his or her best advances in the world. It's not slaying the dragon. It's maybe defeating the demon within. It's overcoming oneself. Okay, there's a quote, I'm not sure it's a Greek or somebody that says, or a Roman perhaps, that he who conquers himself is greater than he who conquers a nation. Okay, that's how hard this is. Okay, make no mistake. I'm not saying it's easy. And I think that's the trouble with some of the mind science or success evangelism that goes on. Hey, just think a better thought and it'll all be cool and it'll all be great and you'll have a new car and your life will be wonderful. It's hard, okay? It really is. Trust me. I've been working on this for a long time. It's amazing. It's one of the greatest journeys you'll ever take. But don't, and I hope you don't think that I'm telling you that it's easy, that it's simple. It's possible. It's doable. It happens. It happens every day. But it takes a dedication. It takes a discipline. It takes a willingness to open up and try something new with yourself, with your thoughts, your beliefs. Some of your most deeply held beliefs may get challenged, may have to change. Okay? So this will only come through an exploration, an adventure of discovery. We're going to rely on some of the great words spoken by some of the greatest thinkers throughout history, across cultures, regardless of discipline. It could be from science, it could be from sports, it could be from really anywhere. We can get these nuggets of wisdom that are practical when applied to our lives in making the conscious and direct changes that we need to. All right? So, what can you do with this? As a takeaway, just become aware that you have this inner life, no matter what it is you're doing. See, a lot of times this inner life is on autopilot. Well, that's just how I think. Or you're not even thinking about how you're thinking because there's too much stuff to do. We have this life that's so busy and full of things and problems to solve, and you have to take care of this. I mean, it's amazing how even in this modern age, you think we'd have labor-saving inventions and it should be easier. It may actually be harder because we have a lot of pressure coming in. We're able to take in information faster, at a greater rate, and more of it than people previously did, leaving maybe simpler, perhaps in other ways, more difficult lives. And this is the life that we have. And if we can just pause, maybe this will be a takeaway. If you can pause before leaving the house, before you lock the door when you're stepping outside, or even before you open the door to step out, say to yourself, oh, okay, I'm going out into the world. Am I going to take with me my bad attitude, my frustrations? Am I going to take these resentments or fears or anything else that I have into the world, and maybe unknowingly or unconsciously take them out on another person? Okay? Tell yourself, I'm a thinking person. I have control over my thoughts and my inner life, and I choose to go out in the world before I open this door as somebody who is peaceful, somebody who is positive, somebody who is harmonious with life. And guess what? When you go out in the world, the crazy things are still going to happen. Someone's still going to cut you off in traffic or shortchange you at the register or something. There's always going to be something. The difference is you, because you're going to be able to encounter this situation. You're going to be able to take it in a much different way than you would if you were just on autopilot, because then you get a reaction. And it doesn't involve a lot of thinking. It's like a reflexive response. What you want is a conscious response, okay? Not a knee-jerk. You want to pause, take a breath. Okay. Maybe, yes, if somebody cuts you off in traffic, that's bad, but let them be wrong, okay? Let somebody be wrong. Let them get in front of you, cut over 5 lanes if that's what they have to do. Even if you're right, it's okay to let somebody else be wrong. Just don't take it on. Don't let it affect you. Just say, well, who knows what this person has going on in their life? Okay, maybe they're just a crappy driver. Maybe they really are mean. I don't know. But you don't have to respond that way. You don't have to treat somebody the way they treat you. So go out in the world, know that you're living this inner life and that you're in control of it, and enjoy yourself. And we'll see you next time here on Living the Inner Life.